Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. Tonight, I'm very excited to welcome our guest, Jamie Carbone, to the show. Jamie is a comedian based out of Portland, Oregon, who combines their queer experiences, nerdy lifestyle choices, and being raised in West Virginia to create a comedy voice that they've spent over a decade cultivating. Everybody, welcome to the show, Jamie.
Hello. Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be here. Especially since I think that my invite probably came out of left field.
Yes, it was very surprised. Not in a bad surprise. It was very much like a oh, what is this? Oh, delightful. So yeah, it was a pleasant treat.
Awesome. That's good to hear. First off, I like to always open with how did you choose your name? And I think, in this case, there's still some fun that we can be had with that because you were given a name and it just so happens to have worked out to be sort of gender non-specific.
Yes, thankfully. It was a I guess a happy surprise, out of all the things that could be. I grew up I'm named after both my grandfathers. On my birth certificate it says James August, after my grandfather Jim and my pap Augie. And we already had a Jim, and then I had an Uncle James that married into the family. So I was, as a baby, given Jamie, and my parents always talked about, oh, well, eventually you'll be like Jim, Jimmy, James. And I remember as a child being like, no, I won't. I'm Jamie. Why would I change? Why would I become somebody else? I like Jamie. I'm just gonna stay Jamie. There was a summer at a camp I tried to go by JC because that was my preferred member of NSYNC was JC Chazé. But that lasted for 2 weeks before when my parents picked me up from camp, and they were like, they told them that they were here to pick me up. They said, "Oh, you mean JC?" And then when I got in the car, my parents were like, "So how was camp, JC?" And they, according to them, I said, "That's a camp name. You call me Jamie."
I love it. I love it. It was just for that moment, just for that time.
Just for that bit of history, that only a few people knew JC.
Hmm. So typically, when we talk in this show on this segment, we talk about your gender journey and how you discovered yourself and those sorts of things. At what point in your life did you realize that the non-binary identity was what fit with you, and started to use that?
So it is. It's a journey like many has many stops. There were different parts. I remember being very young, and my parents were talking about like boy toys and girl toys. And I remember there being this game Mall Talk. I don't know if you remember Mall Talk, but basically it was like you would go around a shopping mall and occasionally I think you would get like phone calls or you'd have to watch a videotape. I could be having the name wrong. It may not be called Mall Talk. I mean, it could be combining games. But it was very much labeled a girl board game. And I very much remember being, as a child, I was like, I want this game. I love the mall. I love shopping. I want this game. And I remember my parents being like, well, that's not really in the cards because that's a girl game. And I just remember being like, I don't think that matters to me at all. I'm me. So I want this game. I'm not a boy or a girl. I remember specifically being like to my parents, I do not feel like a boy or a girl.
Hmm.
I probably would have been like 6, and I've just been like, I want this game. And I remember them telling me at the time, uh, you just feel that way now. As you get older, that will change. And, you know, when you're 6, yeah, you listen to your parents. I mean, my parents are, for the most part, good people. I won't good parents. They did a pretty good job in a lot of ways. But there were definitely moments where they were like, "Hey, this is still West Virginia. Hey, this is still a Roman Catholic family. This is what we've been raised in." So I remember just being like, there was a point where I definitely remember so many times I would say things to my parents similar to this about being like, "Hey, I don't feel like either of these things," and they would shut me down. They would be like, "No, that's impossible because we don't have this life experience. How can you have this life experience?" So I just remember being like, "Okay, I think I'm going to stop telling them things. I think I've got to keep this to myself because every time I do, I feel invalid. I feel like I've been told in one way or another that what I'm saying doesn't matter, and that sucks. So I'm just going to stop telling them things. To this day, I stop. I mean, I try to be better about like certain things because I do love my parents, but like it's a process. And as I remember, as I got older, when I was in high school, I was pretty femme. I would had no color problem wearing certain clothing, had no problem like people like if my someone did my nails, I'd like, oh, this looks pretty, I don't care. But then eventually people would make fun of you for it. And again, I wasn't unpopular. I had a lot of friends, but I remember being very self-conscious all the time about everything I did. Like even one time I grew my hair long, and at the time I worked at Walmart and people were making fun of me for having long hair, and I'm like, this feels good. But because I'm getting made fun of for it, it's got to go because at the end of the day, like I was like, I need to not. I already hated myself. I can't have these other people hating me too. And it got to a point where, as time went on, I was like, I cared less about what other people thought. That's basically what it was. To the point where I remember I lived in Chicago at the time. I was talking with a comedian buddy, and we were talking about another non-binary person that we knew. And at the time, I'd only been in Chicago maybe a year. I knew of non-binary. I didn't know many non-binary people. It was just like there weren't many in West Virginia, but as I was becoming part of Chicago's art scene, I met more. I became more familiar with what it was. I was talking to a buddy about it, just asking some things, asking about pronouns, and I remember being like, I don't really like he, him pronouns. Like they're fine, but they're not my preference. And I was like trying, like, I mean, we were talking about like the G, the Zer, all those other ones, and I remember him just being like, well, yeah, I think that's you wanting that. I think is being selfish, and I was just like, oh, all right. Well, I'm gonna bottle this back in for a few more years, and then moved to Portland. Slowly became more comfortable with that and my queer sense of identity. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, I was like, I'm just pulling this band-aid off. I'm just this is I've known I'm not a guy for a while now, and I'm sick of being like the only person who knows that I'm not a guy. I've never been a guy. I've never once felt like I needed to represent myself in that way for me, just for other people. So I'm sick of doing the legwork for people who aren't going to do the same for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it was probably 2.5 years ago, like really right at the beginning of that pandemic, where I'm just like, yeah, this is who I am. Um, and that, I honestly probably chose that because I knew I wasn't going to see people anytime soon, and I would not have to explain it to everybody all at once. I was able to do it over social media, which made it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Until I got more comfortable in that being part of my identity and wasn't second guessing myself. So it was a 30+ year journey. But we got there, and now I wouldn't, I mean, I would, if I could have come out sooner, would I? Sure. But if I hadn't come out when I did, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And that's, I like who I am today. I like who I am today. That may change tomorrow, but right now I like who I am. So I very much am happy that, I got there eventually as opposed to not at all.
And what did that do for you at the beginning of the pandemic when you finally told people who you were? How did that change things?
There was a big fear. Honestly, I was afraid I was going to lose a lot of friends over it. And you know what? I probably have. People have probably talked to me a little less, but my closest friends have all been supportive. Which you know what? I think if they hadn't been, they wouldn't have been my closest friends anyway. So I'm glad that I was able to surround myself with those kind of people. But it has made me more confident in myself. It has made me feel more comfortable in my skin. It has made me feel like I can justify, wearing a certain thing, doing a makeup a certain way, in a way where it has helped bolster my confidence more than hamper it. Most of the time. Occasionally, when I chip nail polish, I definitely I spiral a little, but who doesn't?
I paint my nails so rarely that it's sort of ridiculous because that was something that I used to crave and wish to do all the time. I have like 100 bottles of nail polish, and it's that very reason, the fact that it chips so quickly, and just I'm such a perfectionist in my
Yeah.
life that like as soon as they're chipped, they're ruined and it's over, and it's like, why
Hmm.
did I even spend the time doing this?
Yep. Now it's a special event thing because
Yeah.
otherwise I will be spending all my free time touching it up again.
Hmm. So how did that affect your comedy? I'm assuming that you were doing comedy at that point when you did finally come out.
Yeah. So I've been doing comedy for 10 years. I started in West Virginia, which was not a good place to start anything. But that is why I moved to Chicago. I moved to Chicago about 2 years in, and I'll call Chicago comedy grad school, in that there is a lot of stage time and a lot of opportunity. There's not necessarily a lot of money, but there is a lot of places to get stage time to work on your craft. There's a comedian here, Ben Levy. He has a great joke about how when it comes to stand up is the only art that you can improve on in front of other people. Like if you want to be a musician, you can shut your door and do it by yourself, practice the guitar. But for stand up, you have to get on stage, you have to test reactions, you have to learn what works for you, your cadence, your delivery. So all of that is something that you have to do in front of people. And I got bored of Chicago. I'm sure I wasn't the first. I know I won't be the last. I decided I wanted to live somewhere else. My brother was out here going to college. I decided to come out here and support him, and fell in love with it here. And since then, by being a more true version of myself on stage, by being able to talk about my identity in a way that I'm more comfortable with, I think it has made me a stronger comedian, because it's given me a way to not only tap into material that I wouldn't have been comfortable accessing otherwise, but it's also made me more comfortable sharing other things that I would normally consider of a private nature. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about like everything, but I am talking about things that otherwise I might have like skirted the line, because I'm like, oh, I don't know if the audience would be into that. But I know that the right audience, if you find them, they're into anything. So really, it's definitely made me a more genuine person on stage, and that's in comedy incredibly important.
Mhm. Did it also help with your confidence just being on
Yeah.
stage?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Because by being like, this is who I like, because the first time I talked about it, there was a part of my brain that was like, they're gonna boo, they're gonna hate you for who you are. And I was like, this is Portland, Oregon. And my brain was still like, buddy, not this is Portland, Oregon. Sure. Not everybody is like that. So by being able to like, hey, I can talk about this on stage, nobody's yelling at me, nobody is, for the most part, being a dick to me afterwards, feels pretty good. Feels like it validates me, my experience, myself a lot, which is super important.
Mhm. You mentioned something when we were talking beforehand, before the show, about getting, because of your name, Jamie, and the fact that it's could go either way for gender, that you get she sometimes, and that doesn't disappoint you in any way. Do you have any designs on transitioning medically or hormonally in any way?
I don't, not currently, not knock on wood, but anything could happen. We all grow, we all change. Maybe I'll discover a new part of myself. But as of right now, I feel um, very comfortable in being who I am. And, when it comes to makeup, clothing, uh, pronouns, as long as you're respectful, that's what I really care about, pronouns. Because if you don't know and you use mask pronouns with me, I'm not offended. If you do know and you use them, that hurts my feelings, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. But, there's a difference between malice and just unawareness.
Mm.
So but I have no plans. That said, I'm not, we all change, we all grow. I'm sure, if we'd had this conversation 5 years ago, I don't know if I would have talked about being comfortable being non-binary, but at this point right now, I think this is my spot.
Mhm.
I may branch the box out a little bit, but I feel pretty comfortable in this box.
And what does being non-binary mean to you, sort of on a deep ethereal level?
Oh wow. Well, I mean, oh my god, I could talk literally hours about like how gender is a created construct by society and isn't real. And technically, we should all just feel who we are, and we shouldn't have a gender describe us. But
Well, and it's
that
interesting that
feels
you bring that up, and I'm sorry to jump in after I've asked you the
no,
question,
please.
but I feel very binary, and I've been it's been very important for me to not wear like gender neutral clothes, or clothes made for cross dressers that fit a male body. Like it's like, no, I want the female experience. That's very important to me. And so it's, there are lots of different identities, and some of them do still end up, oddly enough, being incredibly binary. And so that's
No,
why it's an interesting discussion to have all the way around.
and I agree. And that when I say that gender, I feel that for me personally, I would never tell someone else how they feel. If you are in that realm, that's all you. But for me, I never felt, for me, being non-binary means that maybe you like elements of both boxes, but it's almost like a Venn diagram, if that makes any
Hmm.
sense, where you just kind of fall in the middle. You don't feel comfortable in either space, so you have to find your own third, fourth, fifth. We, my space, I feel is my space. You know, like I feel like I am Jamie. I don't like being like I'm a third. I hate when you ascribe numbers to it to me personally. But when other people are in that realm, more power to you. That's just not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But I love being me. And there are mask elements, there are femme elements, there are elements that don't subscribe to either, and they all come together in a way that makes me, you know, the person I am. And I can't speak to every non-binary person's experience. That would be insane for me to even try to, but I can speak to mine, and that is how I feel about it on a given. And granted, if you ask me this question tomorrow, it could be like, yeah, I'm the third thing, you know, because it's just one. I'm a crazy. Crazy is a negative, but I meant I. What's the right way of saying this? Flighty. I am flighty at times when it comes to self-description. So it may change just depending on the vibe of the day. But today, I very much feel like when I say I'm non-binary, I mean I am outside of those two well-defined boxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it would be very important and very helpful for all of us if a great majority of the cis community would embrace that and embrace their, lack of hard binary, their tendencies towards the middle, and yeah, accept that a lot more and adopt that
Absolutely
within
agree.
themselves, accept it within themselves.
Yeah, but you know, society they like to create a reason to hate somebody, which is a real bummer.
Hmm.
But they love to do it through history.
Yeah, create a reason to be offended and create a reason to be
Mm-hmm.
mad at somebody, or yeah.
Yeah, for how dare they live their life?
So I know this will probably be a very short part of it. We'd like to dive into the coming out story. How did you come out?
So I initially came out. I've come out, you know, because with every person, it's you know a different time. So I first came out to my wife. We've been together since we were 19, very long time. I'm 34 now. Um, and it was very much a like, hey, I just want to let you know this is who I am. I am a non-binary person. I don't know if this is where my journey is going to stop, but this is where I feel right now, and I want you to know that. And if things need to change, we can talk about that too. But I want you to know that this is who I am. And to her credit, uh, she 100% on board. At no part was she like, "Oh, let me." No, she immediately was like, "I love you. I support you." Which I really appreciated because it would have been a lot harder to do all this by myself. And then the next step was friends. And like I said, it was during the pandemic, so I just did it over text, which is I don't want to say cowardly, but it was by design that way, where I wouldn't have to be in person and then see their faces, if that makes any sense. You know, like terrified of looking at judgment and you know second guessing what that you know what that quick look meant for the rest of my life. So I'm glad I was able to do it in a way where I'm just like I put it into the universe, and I love my friends. I'm gonna choose to trust what they said as being their genuine feelings on it. And then the third tier was family. Family was last because you know I consider friends found family, but like my blood relatives were last, and that one was harder. My younger brother, the one that lives in Portland with me, him I was able to tell pretty easily, and he understood. He lived in Portland for over a decade at this point, and he has plenty of non-binary friends himself. He completely understood. Um, and then at my cousin's wedding this year is when I actually came out to blood family. And the plan was to just come out to my parents, but I have a cousin who is trans, Connor, and he was getting into an argument with our another set of cousins about like trans people and their role in the community, and I was on Connor's side, and then Connor to these cousins outed me, which was not great. It was like no blame on Connor. He was in the middle of an argument, and he was trying to shut down these people that are. I love them. They are family. They are not necessarily very bright. Um, and was giving an example of the variety of gender. And Connor outed me to this part of the family. And to head that off in the past, I'm like, well, I have to come out to my parents tonight. I had not yet come out to my parents. I'm like, I've got to do this now. And I did that one. I pretty much just ripped that band-aid off. I was just like, hey, just so you know, I'm a non-binary person. This is who I am. Um, what that means is that you don't really have a son. You don't have a daughter. You just have a Jamie. That's you have a child. And they seem to understand. My dad made a very frustrating joke. Not even about how he's not a dad or a mom. He's a parent. And I was just like, okay, but like, do you understand what I'm saying here? It was very much that. And he goes, yeah, I understand. And then because it was a wedding weekend with a lot of family stuff, kind of got put on the back burner. I was like, okay, I did this. And then unfortunately, a couple weeks ago, my grandmother passed away. And I flew back home for the services. And while I was there, my Connor has a non-binary partner, and and my parents very much like this partner, but they were um, not great about keeping pronouns straight. So I was being like they, them. I was correcting them. I wasn't being rude about it, but they are boomer. So by just offering a correction, how dare you? They were like, well, we're trying our best. I'm like, no, if you were trying your best, you would be getting it. You're both smart. You're both lawyers. You know pronouns. You know how to refer to somebody. They, them is not hard. It's really not. And then I was like, okay, we have to have my pronoun conversation too. Um, I am also they, them. If you slip up with he, it's fine. It's not ideal. And I want you to understand that it's not ideal and that eventually you may get to a point where I'm upset about it, but I want you to at least try for they, them. And my dad, who I'm probably closer to my father than I am my mother, just because my dad was the one that was home the most when I was a kid. Um, again, made a joke and again upset me. My mom seemed to be much more understanding. She was like, doing her best to understand where I was coming from, and she was like, I will try my best. Please forgive me if I make mistakes, but I am trying to make you feel more comfortable in our house. I was like, great, I appreciate it. I feel like this will be a conversation we have many times until it breaks through. But I feel like I have made some headway with my mom, and then me and my wife and my brother, we flew back to Portland, and I think we were back a day when my mom posted a picture of all three of us for National Sons Day, and she posted it with these. Look at these three men, my three strong boys. I love these my sons, and I just remember being like, each one was just like a dagger.
Yeah.
And I haven't. I mean, this was a week ago, a little more, but I it's gonna be a process,
Yeah.
and I do think we'll get there. But because this is so fresh, I feel like I needed to air some grievance a little bit,
Yeah, totally. See, I was really surprised that pronouns did become important for me because at first I thought, you know, uh, as the sort of a typical thing that we do in the trans community, appeasing others and being the chameleon and trying to be what everybody else perceives or wants us to be, you start out thinking, well, I'm not. It's the subtle thing in the back of your mind. I'm not that important. Like my opinion doesn't matter. Like I'm gonna tell you my thing, but like if you don't get the name right, if you don't get the pronouns right, it's okay. And that's what I truly believed at first.
And I agree. I mean, I when I first came out, I was like I'm masculine non-binary, which, and not to belittle anyone who identifies that way. I understand that is where I thought I fell initially. I was like, he him is fine as long as you understand I'm non-binary. And then with time, it eventually became, okay, I am non-binary, but like he him is okay because. And then eventually it was just like, please just respect me, please, 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 and thank you.
Well, and along that vein, I found it really kind of surprising this year, very recently, that I was out at an event and with someone new. They used she pronouns for me when they were referring to me after we played pickleball together with
Okay.
some other couple for about an hour. And afterwards, she was regaling everybody with the story. And like I said, she was using she pronouns, but she would almost slip she. And it's like, I was surprised at how much that affected me and how much it was like, because it's not about getting the pronouns right. It's about seeing me as me. It's about seeing us
Yeah,
as who we identify as,
absolutely.
and that being accepted and validated as just the thing for everybody.
Yeah, I think seeing them struggle hurts also, because it feels like the reason that they're struggling is because they don't accept us for who we are. At least that's how I feel about it. Not to put words into your mouth.
Mm. Yeah, and like I said, yeah, exactly. You just want to be that thing and have everybody see you as that thing, and it not be a big deal. And then it's just that extra little slap every time of like you mentioned before with the Facebook post, the little daggers of oh that hurt, oh that hurts every time.
Yeah, it feels like death of a thousand cuts.
Hmm. So, what does a journey look like for you in exploring your identity? You know, we usually talk in, you know, like a male to female or female to male sense of the goals that you set out when you started your transition, or what sort of, you know, what that means to you, how that changed. Did you have anything like that in mind, or what were your thoughts and maybe goals when you came out?
So that's such an interesting question because I guess I don't think I figured that out entirely, to be perfectly honest. My main thing was I wanted to experiment to see what made me feel euphoric in my body, because that was something I'd always struggled with. Like ties make me want to die. Facial hair, I had it for a while, but then I feel like it made me was me maybe overcorrecting for my real identity. So
Hmm.
that was very much a thing where I had to I despise it now. So I experimented a lot with clothing and with makeup. I found that I loved doing my nails, as we talked about, but the chipping is bad. I don't love doing makeup on my face in a traditional sense. I love to do war paint, if that makes any sense. You know, like a dash of color across my eyes or something to help like accentuate them. And I love doing my eyes. I love my eyes. But that's about it when it comes to makeup. Like I don't like anything on my lips. I don't like doing like an under thing or anything. I mostly experiment nowadays with clothing. Clothes that are maybe cut for a more femme body. I don't mind a deep neck or anything like that. I don't mind skirts. I don't mind things like. I think my next big journey is, and we talked about it a little bit beforehand, but wigs. My next big step feels like it's going to be wigs because I want to be able to, depending on the mood, depending on the day, be able to go to work with a bob or a mullet or you know, whatever Prince Eric had in The Little Mermaid. Just something that makes me feel more confident in myself on a given day. That's something that goes with the look that I'm going for, that I'm aspiring for.
Hmm. And have that ability for that to shift and change from day to day.
Yes, exactly. I want to be a mannequin, I guess is what I'm saying.
Nice. That's a fun thing to aspire to. I love that.
Yeah, feels good.
What are some of the things that you've struggled most with as you've gone through your gender journey?
I guess I mostly struggled with again, like it's something like I've talked about it many times about how others perceive me because I'm the kind of person that both loves attention, but it has to be controlled attention. It has to be attention. Like that's when it comes to stand up, it very much has to be like I'm performing in a way where I control this. This is how I feel. But if I'm getting attention for like what an outrageous outfit choice, then and I feel like I'm being mocked for it more than anything, that's bad attention. So it's very much me just trying to find out a way to get the attention I like. And if I'm not getting the attention I like, spin it in a way where I don't feel like I'm about to fall apart because, my ass looks terrible in a certain skirt or something, or like shorts. I love shorts. I always like to call what I call tomboy chic. I want to look like the main girl from that's oh gosh, what was it called? What was the movie where Macaulay Culkin got murdered by bees? That's a spoiler for the movie. I do apologize. My Girl, I believe it was My Girl.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think that sounds
Yeah,
right.
so like I love the suspenders, like with like a nice sweater and like a pigtailed wig or something. That feels like a good look to me, but it would not necessarily get the attention that I want, the quote unquote good attention.
Hmm. I remember that very strongly from very early in my exploration of my journey of my gender, and wanting to buy and wear all the clothes and putting them on and feeling amazing, and then walking past a mirror and just going and just having like everything shatter, just having my whole world fall apart.
Yes, that happened to me thrifting the other day, so I very much understand.
Mhm. Do you struggle with forms of dysphoria in your day to day?
I wouldn't say necessarily day to day. I feel like I'm so yes, always. But a lot of the dysphoria I come from is less gender based and more societal shame. Like I'm fat, and that is something I often beat myself up for, even though I go to the gym 4 days a week. Like I have like an athlete's BPM when it comes to my blood pressure, but because I'm still built in a way society frowns upon, I feel that way. So I try to find other ways, like where I can still feel pretty, even though I feel large. So that's where like the colorful floral prints will come in. That's where like the nails, I have a wide variety of hats depending on the mood because I don't have wig money, but I do have hat money. Um, but a lot of the dysphoria I feel like is mostly body hair related. I hate my back hair. Like I love my chest hair. I hate my back hair because I feel like my chest hair is like strong and beautiful, and I feel like my back hair is like wispy and gross. I feel the same way about like my arm hair. I don't like this. I don't like my leg hair, and I don't like growing facial hair. So it's like basically, I wish I could just like nair certain parts of my body forever, but not the whole thing.
Mhm. So you have a sort of a typical trans thing of hating everywhere that everything that the hair is doing on your body you hate from top to
For the
bottom
most part.
because it's not growing where you want it and it's growing everywhere else.
Yeah, if I could transplant my back hair to my top of my head, I think I would be much happier.
Mm. That's the one thing that I feel like I got really lucky with is I don't have any chest or well I have one back hair,
Just the one though.
just the
So
one, and it's just every once in a while it's just like there's just this random like inch and a half 2 inch long hair and it's like where did that come from? But you know it's my one little friend. So, is there something that you do, any kind of ritual or anything, to find validity in who you are and your non-binary identity, or just basically your not binary identity?
so I used to not be a photo person. I very much hated taking photos of myself. I despised any kind of recorded thing that wasn't funny. That wasn't like a hilarious thing. Like if you look at like my high school photos, there's a lot of like uncomfortable like grimaces and stuff like that. Family photos, same thing. I would like maybe have a forced smile, but that would be about it. So now what I've tried to do is on moments where I feel hot, maybe it's just emotionally, maybe it's spiritually, I feel hot,
Mhm.
take a photo, take a selfie, run to the bathroom, take one in the on the mirror, take one in yourself. I take them in the gym all the time after a workout when I feel strong because it gives me that same kind of feeling. It makes me feel more confident in my skin, and I will take that in any form I can get.
Mimi had commented in the chat, and I wanted to bring it up before, but I went off on my little tangent there. But she had posted today's gender is cute hat.
Honestly, yes. If I could, if I could just like put that underneath my eyelids and then just every time I blinked, I remembered that would probably help me feel a lot more confident in my sense of self.
What do you feel your biggest hurdles have been in presenting as a non-binary identity?
I'm still incredibly mask, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I am like 5'11". I'm large. I don't think I have a deep voice. I think I actually have kind of a voice that could be identified either way, but a lot of people say it's pretty mask, and we hear ourselves different than other people hear us. So I hate that about myself. Hate about myself is a strong term. I don't like that it can be read that way is would be a more accurate way. Um, so I understand that about me, and even the way I dress often is still defaults to mask to some people. Um, but I always like to try and uh, on days when I feel like I need to represent myself, because not every day. Some days I'll just throw a t-shirt on, leave the house, shorts, and I'll be like, okay, you know what? If people think I'm masculine, I don't care. I'm just out of the house. I'm just living my life. But then there are days where I very much want to be read as non-binary. I need that confidence, and I will ask myself, and this is the dumbest thing in the world, but I'll ask myself, would would George Costanza wear this and still be seen as George Costanza? Because for some reason, at some point in my brain, and I'm not a big Seinfeld watcher, I've barely seen it, but George Costanza's style is kind of what I'm looking for. Like a lot of plaid shirts, suspenders, cute glasses. Um, that's kind of the vibe I want when it comes to like certain non-binary looks. So if I can feel like if that's the kind of look, then I feel like I'm nailing it some days. You know what I mean? He's I guess to me he's a queer icon, even if it's just to me.
Well, and I know you mentioned it in your comedy in the non-binary bit about, we don't owe you androgyny as a
Correct.
non-binary person, but do you still feel pressured in some ways on those days where it's like, I don't want to be seen as masculine, I don't have the energy for feminine. Um, so do you feel like a pressure to put together something that is going to be read as androgynous?
Yes, absolutely I do. I would be lying if I said I didn't, but there are times where I have to not get over it, but I have to understand a way of dealing with it in a way where even if I am dressed in a way where I feel euphoric, there still might be somebody who misgenders me, and I can't let that derail my own positive experience.
Mhm.
I should try to anyway. Sometimes it still does.
As an outsider, hmm, I based on something that you said in the last response, I was kind of thinking that there's sort of an ease with, you know, um, having a general presentation that doesn't fire anybody up in our current political sphere. Like, you just throw on a t-shirt, which is everybody's go-to for just lazy casual. You just throw on a t-shirt, um, and that just sort of naturally puts you in a certain view in most people's minds, and again will probably get you misgendered in that way, but um, it seems like that would there'd at least be the comfort of, I'm not going to catch any crap for my identity today.
There is a sense of that in that I feel like maybe I can hide in it a little bit. But I mean, also like I even try and counterbalance it by wearing some like not gender conforming T-shirts. But it's still a T-shirt. That could be anybody. But there is that sense of I can't get away from this sense, so I'm just going to lean into it for this moment, just to make the day a little easier, even if it does feel like a small betrayal to who I am.
What has your struggle been in coming out and talking to people about who you are, as far as getting them to understand non-binary? Or do you feel like you've found the language to get that across quickly and easily?
It really does differ person to person. I want to be able to like I've figured out the Rosetta Stone to people accepting my identity, but I have not. I have a very close friend still regularly refers to me as he, and I know that it doesn't come from a place of malice. It's legitimately them fucking it up, because I know in other conversations they have no problem as referring to me as a non-binary person. They accept that I'm a non-binary person, but a small part of them, for whatever reason, just trips up on the pronouns. And that is a conversation like we've had it, and I've been like, and they are legitimately. I trust them to be legitimately apologetic, because this is probably my closest, arguably my closest friend. And when they make that mistake, they're very quick to correct. Like I've seen them correct other people immediately, but when they make that mistake, they don't what's the right way of saying this? They make the mistake, they understand they make the mistake, they apologize, they move on. They don't do that thing where I've made this mistake, I need your forgiveness for this mistake. Which I hate when the onus gets put on us, if that
Hmm.
makes any sense.
Yeah.
Um, she understands she makes a mistake. She'll try to, and to her credit, she has done better. But it's definitely a moment where I just feel uh, that I don't know what the secret would be to getting them through all the way. And there are people I know who continuously get it wrong, and we are not close, and I have explained it to them, and then it feels like they're still doing it in a way where if we were closer, I'd probably be more forgiving, but we're not. So I'm at a point where I hate them. I don't want anything to do with them. So and then there are people who I don't like as people, but they always get my pronouns right. Like they always know it. And it's such a wide it's like it's almost like a Richter scale of like hate to gets it, doesn't get it, to hate to it's like the 4 cube. You know what I'm that's not a Richter scale. Richter scale is for earthquake. But you know what I'm saying? Like the political diagram where it's like gets it, hate them, gets it, love them, doesn't get it, hate them, doesn't get it, love them. And I just feels like I'm trying to get everyone towards that, at least this side of the columns, these two. And I don't know if I ever will, but I'm not going to stop. You know, I'm still going to stand up for myself or however I can. And hopefully with time, people invalidate me less.
God, yeah, that's such a sad thing to strive for, is to have
Yeah.
people invalidate you less in your life. Wow.
Yes.
Is there anything that you feel you've been able to accomplish because of your identity or because of the journey you've gone on in exploring it?
So I'll be the first to tell you that when it comes to I have no urge to represent non-binary people. I have an urge to represent myself, but I can't speak for all of us as a whole because there's such a wide variety. We're all on our different journeys. But when younger people or people after comedy shows or the like will say, "Hey, I am also non-binary," and by you being able to poke fun at it and make jokes about your experience and make it seem like it is something, it is an experience that we can make a joke. I've learned that if you put something on a pedestal, that can alienate people, but if you're able to like talk about it, crack wise about it, make jokes about it, it makes people more comfortable with that as an idea. And I feel like in that regard, I do validate a lot of fellow non-binary people's experience. And every time someone tells me that I have made them feel more comfortable in their own skin, that's the best, sincerely, the best thing in the world. If I've made someone else's life a little bit easier, I wouldn't trade that for anything.
What do you feel is your favorite thing that you've learned through your journey,
My favorite thing. Oh gosh, that's
either
such a
about
hard question.
yourself or the world at
Oh, you know
large?
what? My favorite thing I've learned is that I shouldn't have made. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is a big deal, but I wish I trusted the people in my life to love me regardless, because they do. And I wish I had not learned, taken so long to learn that. I wish I had learned that much sooner.
And finally, what advice do you have to pass on to young or closeted trans and non-binary folks out there?
That's, I mean, granted, every experience is different, but my suggestion is that even if you can't be true about it to the people in your life, for maybe health or safety reasons or fear, um, I think the first big step is admitting it to yourself, because I think that's the first person we have to come out of the closet to is ourselves. And I think by just being able to do that and start that journey, it can do a lot for your mental health. It really did for me. By at least validating myself, I felt like that was the first step I needed to take to become the person I am. So I definitely think that you cannot ignore that aspect, because that's a big move. Even to just be honest with yourself about it is a big move. It may not feel it, maybe people might invalidate it, but it is. So don't deny yourself that experience, truly.
I love that. That's wonderful. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
find it in yourself first, and love and appreciate that you've been able to get there.
Exactly.
All right, Jamie Carbone, it has been great to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story today.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.